Can you see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. So just I wanted to show you like how to produce this. Just how to produce this code, right? This support vector machine hard margin graph, right? This is what I was expecting from you, like the code which the templates which I have given to you. Once you use it, this is the kind of graph that you will get, right? So how you can do it. So there's like these are the libraries you NumPy, Matplot, and for that optimizer, so there is a CVX, the package name is CVX OPT, right? So it is, I think, given by Boyd from Stanford. So this library, he is the like creator of it. But yes, it is from Stanford, I think, from Boyd. So this is what CVX OPT solver which you're going to use for your optimization duality problem, right? And then just to bring you that data set into a picture, you are using make moons, right? So it is available in sklearn datasets library. So import make moons dataset. Then there are two type of kernel. Either you can use a linear kernel, right? Or you can use this Gaussian kernel, right? Because my data set is not linearly separable, right? So then I may use this Gaussian kernel here, right? For this Gaussian kernel, this is what is the code, and you might have used it before also. Then the data set, which is make moons, you are bringing some 100 samples from it, and there is a noise like 0.01. There is, you had added some noise also, right? Then this is your labels, X and Y labels, right? And then you just put all this into a complete data set, and this is your what you are sending. X, Y, you are labeling it some for as a positive and some as a negative, right? So you have used some as negative and positive. You just see it like I have done it like long back. So you just go through it and you will get to know like what is there. Then this is all code which I want you to use it. This is I have given to you, right? So it will return all those A's, right? Which is nothing but a Lagrangian multiplier A, and it is a vector A into n, n into 1 vector. So some of them will be zeros and some of them are non-zeros, which is a support vectors. Then this is what you want to, you can use for predicting Y, right? So predicting Y means for a given X, what is the, what do you think, whether it belongs to class 1 or class 0, right? So either it is above the hyperplane or below to the hyperplane. I hope like this is making sense to you. So then you're returning that thing based on like what is your prediction. And this code is like to predict, to find it out what is the value of B, right? So in my lecture, I had told you that we can find out an average. Here, like we have used this thing, right? Uh, Darshan, can you unmute yourself? Darshan. Right. So this is what we can then implementing a support vector machine, right? Can you see the code, guys? Can you see the code?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So then this is like you can then you are bringing that data set into a picture, and then you calling your metric, you are forming a kernel matrix, and then this is your T matrix. You just go through it and you will see everything that makes sense to you. Then after calling a dual optimizer, this is a vector alphas which you're going to get. Then you are finding it out which are the alphas which are having some positive values that are not zero exactly. Then you're calculating your W vector for hyperplane. Then you are calculating what your B is, and then finding out that the values, right? So you can just mute it as well. I mean to say you can comment this part. Then you're plotting the figure. So the what I want to show you here is that just to draw the hyperplane, what you can do, you just can form a grid here, right? This is a grid. So on this grid, you can predict for each point what is the probability of falling to class 1 or 0, right? Once you get that, then you can actually highlight all those values which are -1, 0, and 1. So in the grid, whichever point gives you -1, you are highlighting that point. Whichever point gives you 0 in your grid, you are highlighting that point, and in your grid, whichever is 1, you are highlighting that point, and you are putting it as a contour, right? So contour means then it will be a level curve, and then you are saying that whatever it is, you just label it, whether it is 0, -1, or +1, right? Once you plot it, this is how it look like. So these points in a grid, so the grid is so fine that when you do a contour, so these points are dot, 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 and it look like that it is a curve here, right? So these all points will give you -1, and these all points will give you 0, and this yellow will give you a +1, right? So this is how you can do it. Okay? So I hope this is very simple to do. The only thing is, if you know the theory, everything will make sense. Otherwise, this is a very few line of code. There are very few lines here. Even if you can do some experiment here rather than using your kernel method, right? So even if you just don't want to use your kernel, Gaussian kernel, and you can use your this linear kernel instead of. Then let's see like what it look like. So this is what when I use a linear kernel, right? So for this linear kernel, because is this making sense to you guys? Why it is there in linear kernel and what was in Gaussian kernel? What is the difference? Can anybody tell me why I'm getting this graph when I'm using linear kernel? So linear kernel means I have not used any basis function here. I am just executing the whatever x is in my data set, I have used as it is, right? So this is my this is my kernel function. So I have not used any basis function, or I have used some kernel trick. Your voice was breaking. So do now? Okay, fine. Just a minute. Let me switch my network. Okay. Till then, you can think like why I'm getting this decision boundary. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, very nice. I think that now it will not be a problem. So I was asking like, what do you think why I'm getting this kind of a decision boundary? And if I use this Gaussian kernel, then I can get this the other decision boundary what I had shown you. So this is what when I'm using only linear functions, linear kernels, And if I'm using my Gaussian kernel, then I just get something different, right? So what do you think why I'm getting this? It is very straightforward now, I think. It should be very straightforward. Who wants to answer this? Okay, let's get back to the slides now. So what do you think why I'm getting that decision boundary when I'm using Gaussian kernel and when I'm using linear kernel? I'm getting very different decision boundary. So due to projection in n dimension. So when I do use Gaussian kernel function, so what do you think that in which space I am projecting? What is the dimensionality of that space? So Sayyid Sufan is saying that because we are projecting in some n-dimensional space. So when I'm using Gaussian kernel function, what is the dimensionality of that space? What do you think? I have proved it, right? I have shown you that the dimensionality of the Gaussian kernel is something like, what is that dimensionality? Anybody? When I'm using Gaussian kernel function, what is that trick will help me to do some inner product in some high dimensional space? What is the dimension of that high dimension? You should buy this. This should be a very trivial question to you if you are really looking for some good companies to crack, right? So infinite dimension, right? Very good, Bhav. Though you are not very confirmed, but yeah, quite right. So it is an infinite dimensional space, because if you just exponent, the series will be of exponent series and it go from 0 to infinity, right? So you can expand it in some infinity space. So the inner product is somewhere there. So you just watch my lecture which I have given to you on kernel basis functions. So kernel tricks. So there you can get. So yes, it is an infinite dimensional space. So when I use when I'm using Gaussian kernel, so it means I am projecting my x and into some infinite space and then doing an inner product there. So it means it can very easily overfit my data because the dimensionality is very high. So in that high dimensional space, infinite dimensional space, I can always find my hyperplane so that it can actually it can divide my things linearly. It can divide my things linearly. Linearly, you know, it is a straight thing. So it can, in an infinite dimension space, this could be like visualization. This could be the visualization. But when I get back from infinite dimension to two-dimension space, right? From infinite, and I want to visualize it, this is how this infinite dimension straight thing will look like, right? This is how it will look like in a two-dimensional space. It get curvy here, right? It get very different in two-dimensional space. So these things which were there in which were actually hyperplane in infinite dimension, they are here. You can say they are hyperplanes, but they are these hyperplanes being projected again into two dimension, and that's why they are not look linear now here, right? So that if you don't use a kernel trick, it means you are actually trying to find out a hyperplane in the same dimension, two-dimension space, but your data it doesn't have that it is not linearly separable data, right? So if it is not linearly separable data and you want to find out a hyperplane which can divide it, and I don't want to compromise on error, right? So I cannot find out any line which can divide it straight, right? Because I don't want to compromise on my error. So this is why what hard margins have a problem. So I said that, and that's why we are getting that linear boundary. That's why we are getting that jeopardized boundary, this kind of boundary, right? So because it is not linearly separable and you are trying to find out a linear thing there. So if let's see here, you are using kernel function that is linear, that is XX transpose, the same kernel function. And if you use for this data set, you can see that this data is linearly separable. So this kernel function will directly straight work here because this data is linearly separable. So you don't need to use a Gaussian kernel here because visually you can see that it is already linearly separable in this dimension only. But if you still want to use that magical power of projecting into infinite dimension and then find out a hyperplane, when you get back and project that using Gaussian kernel and you do the same trick, Gaussian kernel trick, and find out a hyperplane and project back into 2 dimension, the hyperplane will look like this, which is non-linear because these hyperplanes were the hyperplanes in infinite dimension, not in 2 dimension. When you project it back, it will be curves, right? So if data is linearly separable, I don't think so that you need to go for these kernel tricks and projecting into infinite dimension. But the practical problem is you can never get to know like whether my data is linearly separable or not. This is a very challenging task, right? If things will be before known to you, then most of the things you can do very easily. But if I give you some 100-dimensional data and give you 1 million points, it is very hard. It is not easy to tell like whether it is linearly separable or not, right? So I hope this makes sense to you. So are you getting my point? Like when you want to use a linear kernel and when you want to use a Gaussian kernel, can you write yes or no for this? And you write yes or no only when you understand this, right? Because just I got to know like you forgot Gaussian kernel. Only Bhavya was able to guess that. Okay. Very nice. So this is, you should remember the things. Even you have polynomial kernels also. You remember your polynomial kernels, what we have done, you can do X transpose Y plus C to the power M, right? This is same that what was a polynomial kernel thing that you had used in your Gaussian kernel things, right? X to the power x square x cube, all per things will get. You just still watch that lecture. I think there is a need to rewatch that lecture again. Okay. Now the motive is that I was using my hard margins, and if the moment I start using hard margins, so my this space is getting squeezed so much just not to get any kind of error, right? Not to get any kind of error, because the more they are the less they are linearly separable, the more twist I am going to get in my this hyperplanes, and they will be sandwiched, right? There will be kind of bottleneck somewhere. So if I am ready to accommodate some errors, right? If I am ready to accommodate some error, for example, just a difference here. So if I'm accommodating some error here, so this is when I am not accommodating any error. So this is a kind of a margins. This is a kind of a distance I am getting. And let's say if I have done it, that thing also. Okay. So this is when I am ready to accommodate some error. So can you see the difference here? This is like how broad it is now. So I'm just happy to see some errors, though they are not actually errors. So this is my that main hyperplane y equals to 0. If the things are above this they belongs to blue class, and if it is below that, then belongs to red class, right? So if I am okay to get some of the things here, right, then I can actually broaden my margins, right? And then my generalization will get better. So even I have not taken any point across this hyperplane. So my red point is not here for any of the case. Even my blue point is not here in any of the case. So this is what I mean to say. So you are just not very strict to your error function, and you say it's okay if some I am crossing, I am having here and there some bit error in terms of margins, right? So this is a basic idea. So you understand this thing, what I'm trying to say here? Like if you're able to accommodate some error, then you can broaden your margins. Is this okay to you? Like, or I need to explain further for your understanding? Fine. Okay. Good. So let's start then how to do it. Let's start then how to do it. So we were saying that we need to have an infinite error, right? So the idea was this was your hyperplanes, right? And I am not ready to get any of the points in this region, right? I'm not ready to get any of the point in this region. And then that's what we have said, that you should get an infinity error if you are having any points in the region, right? So then what the thing is, right? If you are not that much strict, then you are, then what you are saying, I'm actually okay to get some points here, right? So let's say this is a cross, this is a dot class. So you're saying that though I was expecting anything, everything, like what it should be, you remember this condition yn tn should be greater than or equal to 1. So in hard margins, we were saying that the nearest point is actually one distance away from the margin, right? One distance away from the margin, and rest of the point either they one distance away or more than that, right? So they are falling beyond the margins, right? So you were saying this in hard say, but here you are saying, okay, let's say that I am okay to get some points here, right? And for this point, what you're saying, if this point is here, though ideally I wanted to make this equals to 1, though ideally I want to make it equals to 1, but if some error can be accommodated here as well, right? So I can accommodate some error here. So this is known as psi error, right? So this is how you are writing it. So for particular nth point, if it is coming in this range, so you are saying that I will add some positive error here, right? This is a positive error to this point. Right? So this is how you are getting it. So it is 0 for those points which are actually here, which are at the proper place, which don't fall into this region. So psi is 0 for these things. But if it is falling into this margin spectrum range, or I would say this region, right, then it is non-zero. And the value that you can calculate for this is this absolute value, because I don't want to, I want to put my error in terms of absolute sense, right? And how far, how inside it is in the wrong region, right? So ideally I want nothing to be fall beyond 1, right? So if it is, then if it is inside the range, then I have to find out through the subtraction, right? So this is how I get it. Just to be more precise, like as I said, that this psi will be non-negative for those points which are actually in the region here, right? So this is this is this, right? So you can see this psi is less than 1, right? And it is greater than 1 when you are jumping actually the hyperplane on the right direction, right? It is fine if this point is somewhere here, right? Still it is in the right region, but it ideally it should be beyond this blue hyperplane, but you are here now inside this blue hyperplane. So but actually you are on the right side still. But if you cross this hyperplane, right, if you cross this hyperplane, then you actually on the wrong region, you are at the wrong side, right? So if you are at the wrong side, if you are crossing the main hyperplane which is at 0, then your psi value will be greater than 1. And if you are actually in this range here, then your psi value is actually greater than 0 but less than 1, right? Because you know the distance between here to here is 1, as I we have already seen in this hard margin. So the distance was ideally from here to here was 1, right? So if just to cross this bandwidth, you need to bring. So now if you just say this, just to more clearly visualize, let's say you are here, right? So you are just in the center. So your psi is 0.5 here, right? Yeah, this is 0.5 for this particular point, 0.5, right? 0.5. So now you have some prediction, some y prediction for this point. That y prediction was 0.5, right? That y prediction was 0.5. And if you add another error to it, psi 0.5, then you are actually getting 1, right? So this is an error that you have to make it 1, right? So the second example I want to take, just because 0.5 was seen. So let's say some point comes here, right? So the ideal distance which I was expecting was 1, right? I was expecting 1, but this point comes so close, and the y for this is, the y for this point will be 0.2, right? And I was expecting y for every point it should be 1, right? So let's say that is 0.2. So make it 1, I need to add some distance here, right? I need to just add some distance here, and then it is this psi, it should be equal to 0.8, right? It should be equal to 0.8, because ideally what I want, every distance should be equal to 1 on the right side. That's why I'm multiplying this thing with Tn, right? So this means it is a right side, and then I am adding some psi to it if there is some error that can be accommodated, right? And it should be always greater than equal to 1, right? It should be always greater than equal to 1. When I bring this psi from to this side of inequality, right, then I can say Tn yn should be greater than equal to 1 minus phi n, psi n, right? That's how you can write it now. Any question on this? Because this is the only point that you need to understand very clearly. So you are adding, this is known as a slackness, right? So you are adding some slack variable. Slack means how much you can accommodate on the wrong side. So this is a slack variable. So you are actually adding some error to make it right, right? So for an example, just to clear further, one last example so that it can. So the ideal thing was I should be here. The distance from hyperplane from here to here was 1, right? But I somehow come here, right? Can anybody tell me what is the slackness I should add to make it correct? Anybody? What is the slackness? What is the error I should add to make it correct? Very good, very nice, beautiful. So this is the whole intuition if you understand it, and this is for every variable. The last thing is, so all of you agree that it is 2, right? So because I just concluded from 2 students that everybody understood. So each of you understood that it is 2, or still there you have somehow some of you have a problem here, right? So can you get right? Yes, okay. Please respond in a number so that I can be very sure that you are understanding this point. Good, very good. So this is here like this is how we are good. So can you, the second thing is, my error is actually linear in a sense of the distance away from a hyperplane on the wrong side. So if I'm here, so the distance will tell me what is the error from here, right? So it is somehow linear in the sense, it is not growing exponentially. So if I'm 1 meter away, so my error is 1 meter, right? So error is 1 meter. So I am somewhere here. If I'm 2 meter away, so my error is also 2 meters. So I am somewhere here. So if I'm 3 meter away, somewhere here. So this is a line, right? So this line is actually linear. Slope can be different, but it can be grow linearly, right? It can grow linearly. It is not say quadratic or exponential, that if you are 5 meters away you are somewhere here, if you're 10 meters away you are somewhere here, and when you join it you can do this. No, it is linear error, right? So this is the important thing that you should understand here. This is a linear in a sense, like how much you are away from the hyperplane on the wrong side. This is a linear in sense. So you can calculate this slackness for every variable. Now can anybody tell me what should be the objective of my optimization problem in this side aspect? What is I should maximize my sum of size, or I should minimize my sum of size? So let's say for every variable this is sum, right? From I equals to 1 to n, I equals to 1 to n. So for every variable, so what should be? It should go down or up? It should be 0, or it should be some positive number? Minimize, right? We should minimize it, because slackness is 0 for those variables which are on the right side. So the objective function should be such that the size should be minimized. The sum of these all should be minimized, right? Fine. Okay. The rest of the things are same, right? So this is the same constant that you want on the right side for hard margins. Now what you're saying that this is actually yn, right? So you're saying you want to add some slackness here, and when you brought slackness on this right side, it is negative of that. So this is how you are getting it. Fine. Okay, so the objective function was first this, right? This was your objective function. You remember this? We have seen it yesterday. I expect you to remember this. Very good, very nice. Only one student? Very nice, good. So this is what we were minimizing with some constant, and now I just added slackness, and I will add this slackness to the same objective function, and I am collectively minimizing these two terms, right? This is what we are collectively minimizing it. And how much I should weight this slackness is given by this parameter c. For an example, if I make c as infinity, right, it means I am actually doing hard margins. I am not ready to accept any error, right? If c is infinity. So c is my hyperparameter, which say like how much lenient you are in the slackness. So if c is infinity, then you are saying I don't care. I'm actually doing hard margins here. And if you are if it is less than some like 1 or 2 or 3, it is a hyperparameter. If it is greater than 0 and then you're actually ready to accept some error in terms of the slackness, right? And rest of the things are same. So if you now the objective function is this with new constraints, right? This was your constant. So this was your constant, because you need to put your gx greater than equal to 0, right? So if you see here, so this is your constraint, but you want to put it is greater than equal to 0. So it is tn yn minus 1 minus psi n greater than equal to 0, right? Oh, sorry, plus. Right? This is what is minus 1 plus greater than equal to 0. This is your gx. And for every point, you are multiplying it with the Lagrangian an, right? And you're summing them up because there are n such constraints. So this is the same term which we have seen for hard margins, but as the constant has changed, that's why this psi has come here, right? Now this is a new additional term which is different from my hard margin. Why this is a new term? Because my new constants, additional constraints are such that every psi should be greater than equal to 0, right? And how many psi are there? There are n psis. So now you multiply every with some Lagrangian multiplier, and this Lagrangian multiplier here is mu n, right? So you multiply this Lagrangian multiplier mu with this constant psi, and then this is how you are putting it into your objective function. And because it is greater than 0, that's why negative come here. And similarly, this is gx is greater than 0, that's why it is negative here. So this is a second constant. The Lagrangian multiplier here is mu n, right? And collectively, if you see this, this is your cost function totally. This is your Lagrangian actually. This whole is your Lagrangian. It seems to be scary, but I feel that it is very easy to analyze now. Can all of you just say that you can see and understand this? Why? What is the problem here? What is the sort of thing here? I don't know. Like this was your objective function in your hard margins, right? Then you had additional slackness which you want to minimize. These are the constants multiplied by Lagrangian multiplier, and the additional constant because you need to size greater than equal to 0. That's why you are putting another constant. Constants can be anything, right? So you are just putting Lagrangian with your constants and multiplying the Lagrangian, putting it with the objective function. So this is your main objective when you're clubbing your constants with the objective function, right? So if you don't understand anything, you can ask me, right? It is not that I can, I always take granted that you have understood it. So any confusion, you can ask me. You have any questions? Can you let me know?
So where is the B being used?
What is your question?
The Lagrangian of W, B, comma A. Where is the B being used?
So B, actually, if you see your Y, right? So Y can be written as W transpose X plus B.
Oh, it's a bias. My bad.
Right. So this is why it is W transpose. Right. That's why we are saying that this is a prediction, right? When you whatever the value you get from here, it should be multiplied by T, and it should be always greater than 0. Any other question? Okay, so I will upload this video lecture today, and I expect you to just see these two lectures together for hard margins and today's lecture. And tomorrow I will wind up everything, right? I just don't want to rush up on this. Fine. And the thing that makes sense to you should code it, right? You should code it. So just for your help, I will upload this code which I have shown you here on my GitHub repository, and you can just take it from there and just play with it. But the idea is you should understand and play with this thing. You should understand this thing. Fine. So then I will go over these KKT conditions, and then I will wind up tomorrow this lecture for this support vector machine. Right. So till then we can just close it, and I expect you just read that chapter as well, right? So for an example, these are the KKT conditions for constant for this constraint, right? This is a KKT condition for this constant, and these are the another set of constants. This is a KKT condition for this set of constants, right? So this should make sense to you. So that the question is that C is acting in the same way like lambda in regularizer linear. Yeah, kind of. So you can just have like a hyperparameter to control how much you want to regularize it. So for example, if you want to add C is infinity, though it is an inverse thing, right? So if you remember when you had a lambda there in your linear regression, So the bigger lambda it was, it should be more generalized. But here the C, if you make it bigger, it is hard marginalized, and which is not generalized good. So it is kind of an inversely proportional relation. You understand, Yashdeep here? Very good. So this is kind of an inverse relation. The bigger C here is the less generalization. There, the bigger lambda is the more generalization. Right. So you take your time on this. I just don't want to run on these sites. So tomorrow I will wind it up. But the only thing is that you should watch these lectures. You should read this thing, and then I will wind it tomorrow with some question answering sessions, not this blindly, right? Okay, then if you don't have question, please stop your